Hello! I'm here to do my video journal on Edison and the reading, and I'm just going to hop into it. So, for the first question, social progressivism definitely affected Edison's version. It's a little bit different from the original, as you know, but one of the scenes I really want to talk about is the mirror scene where the monster disappears after like falling in love. Um, I think it's a fundamental like that establishes that like the story is different than Mary Shelley's. Like instead of being about um, a man who goes too far in search of knowledge and creates a child that is neglected and turns to evil, the story is more about a guy who learns the real meaning of life and what really matters is family. Um, I think this idea of like the completion of a heteronormative fantasy, having a family unit, is a way that Edison can make people feel like the movie is doing ultimately a good thing by reinforcing family values rather than focusing on the gore of or just like seeing a dead body. Um, the book mentions that sometimes the monster is a manifestation of the repressed, and if you look at the movie as if the monster is Frankenstein's embodiment of science and industry and wanting to progress as much as he can. That's what stands in the way of him going and marrying Elizabeth and living happily ever after. It's what it says in his letter that we get to read, and I think it just changes the nuanced meaning of the narrative, but in a way that makes it more censorship friendly. Next, I'm going to talk about horror elements. Um, Notably, the iconography that is inside the different scenes and the backgrounds. There's really gothic sets, embellished, detailed. I really liked seeing that. It's really cool. And the book mentions a setting that can create a mood of foreboding or darkness, and having all these skeletons inside his office and the different vials and stuff that kind of just works to uphold the idea of like um, kind of the weight of the setting. The cauldron also, when he is creating the monster, reminded me of Malai's La Manoir du Diable, that I also just watched. That's kind of cool to see that reoccurring in a newer film. And also notably about horror is horror shows rather than tells. Terror is more telling and horror is more showing. And the scene where the wretch is being born and created, that was awesome. But it was very visceral, and you saw each step, and you saw its form, and it did feel like heavy. Like I felt like having knowledge of Frankenstein, the novel beforehand, it was a really like emotional and dark scene because it was like the beginning of the end for this creature, like born into like hopelessness. But it was really cool to see all the details and special effects, which is part of the horror genre. And closing, talking about my opinions, I thought the film was awesome. I didn't know what to expect because it was different than the story, and I was going into it knowing it was going to be censored, which sometimes kind of makes you deviate to the point where it's not even the same story anymore because sometimes things are gritty. But I think it was really well done. It was definitely a fun watch. I liked seeing the performances by the actors, especially who played Frankenstein. You could really like see in his face that he was giving it his all. The monster looked awesome. His creation scene was amazing. Um, the different frames with the mirror on one side and the conversation happening in the foreground on the left, those are really impressive to me, and I really like the spatial dimension they gave the room, even though it's just I don't know, like it was really cool. So I generally thought it was really well done. Um, I loved the spooky settings and all the skeletons they have everywhere, and I think it was just like a really fun introduction to the horror genre, um, and a fun first film to watch. So thank you, and